Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast. My name's Dane Groeneveld, CEO of Huddle 3 Group, and I've got a fellow Australian joining me today, Duncan Young from Sydney. Welcome, Duncan.
Hey, Dane, great to be here with you.
So we were just talking about how to introduce you, and you said, hey, just say it's Duncan from Sydney and let him tell the story, so I'll hand it off.
Great. Yeah, it's one of the things we talk about in wellbeing is the ability just to ask open questions. So tell me about yourself. So my name's Duncan Young. I live in Sydney. I'm a motivational speaker, habit change, and executive coach. And I've had previous to moving into the wellbeing space, I had a long career with international property and infrastructure business called Lend Lease, which over time we moved from being an engineer through to being the head of workplace health and wellbeing.
Great. That's an interesting journey. You don't normally put engineering and wellbeing in the same bucket. So maybe tell us a little bit about how that evolution came about.
Okay, so the concept that I've now learned is called job crafting. So I've always been a curious cat. 30 years ago, I started in the property sector, and I've always had what you probably call a side hustle. So traditional property, site engineer, site manager, project manager, development manager. And in my spare time, I built a house. I won an environmental award. That started me thinking about different ways that you could look at your role, and sustainability was something that was starting to emerge. This is in the early 2000s. So it was interesting that when the tsunami happened, I got an opportunity to be seconded into a UN team in Sri Lanka. And I was able to see firsthand the impact of climate change on these vulnerable nations. From there, I moved into a head of health and wellbeing, head of sustainability role based in the UK. So it's 6 years in the UK, which is amazing. And then I was looking at a thing called sustainable human capital. We call that health and wellbeing today, but much of sustainability is based on energy, water, waste, environmental issues. And now we're looking more deeply into what make people tick and how do we help people thrive. So that's what we call wellbeing.
Neat. And so that sustainable human capital concept, that was from a internal viewpoint, like how to make sure we've got optimal teams, workforce available to our projects, or what was the genesis of that movement?
Look, I've in my 28 years at Lend Lease, I literally was a team of one. So I was always doing something a bit different. I always think that I'm looking at what we call weak signals. And we know that when you watch a weak signal, it takes a lot of time to be adopted by mainstream business. Large businesses per se have always cared about their people. Most companies will say people are our number one assets, but I think at the time people were focusing more on health and safety. So the health and wellbeing is the prevention of chronic disease. Whereas I'm looking at the promotion of wellbeing. How do you coach people to flourish, be the best version of themselves? That's the opportunity that we're trying to provide people, not just being okay, but being the best version of themselves every day.
Yeah. And that you're right. I think it is easy to focus on the statistics that businesses get managed by on safety incidents, etc.
Yep.
But promoting well-being, particularly through COVID, but even before that, it's becoming very evident which companies do a good job of it, which companies don't, and how that plays out, not only in the workplace, but in their community brands and license to operate, everything that goes with that.
Yeah. I suppose the thing that I found, which was interesting, is that I spent most of my time working externally. So I would be out outside of the Lend Lease, essentially selling wellbeing products into large corporates. The clear link between good wellbeing and engagement, and again, the main game is really to increase engagement of your fellow employees. And of course, as we live longer, so you and I are probably going to live, 6 to 9 years longer than our parents.
Yeah.
We're going to live probably into our late 80s, early 90s, and that means we're going to be working longer. So the ability to be healthy, be able to transition between roles, reskill, learn new things, we call that broadly wellbeing, is going to be more important because we're living longer, but we need our healthy lifespan to increase with our lifespan.
Yeah, I like that. And so tell me a little bit about what that looks like. So in those early days, what type of initiatives, activities were you bringing
Yes.
forward to people?
Yeah. Okay. So obviously I'm telling a tale in hindsight. If I joined the dots of all the things that I did along the way, there's no way I could visualize where I would have got to today. But when you look in hindsight, you can see that all the things I've done has add up to the rich experience. I think the permaculture course that I did in the
Uh-huh.
early 2000s probably hasn't accelerated my career, but it's given me a broader awareness. But there are lots of things that I have done. So, I could see that the ability to influence people and to um, understand more deeply about how people operate led me to doing my certification as an executive coach, for example.
Yeah.
So what did it used to look like in the early days? We would essentially we will build awareness. So you'd stand in front of a room and you'd say, you don't stop what you're doing today, you're not going to live a long and healthy life. So they're large format discussions, they're lunch and learns, they're those kind of things. So this is about giving information to people.
Hmm.
But you and I both know that information doesn't equal change. So we work with a Finnish company called First Beat, and
Uh-huh.
they have heart rate variability monitors. They measure your sympathetic and parasympathetic dominance. And for viewers out there, that's just your recovery, that's your parasympathetic, and your sympathetic is your stress system. So we put these devices on people, they'd wear them for 48 hours, and we'd say, why don't you try a few things about your day? So we could see over the course of a day how stressed they were, how they slept. The things they did during the day really impacted their sleep, 12 hours later. So once you have that curiosity, when you give people the actual data and they see their
Yep.
resting heart rate, respiration rates, etc., they start listening. So then we coach them into how to change. And of course, change is difficult, but we know that if you work on your strengths, you're far more likely to succeed in the long term than working on your weakness. So our program is called Build Your Ideal Day, and it uses appreciative inquiry, which is strength-based approach to change. That's what we use, and we've used it through thousands of people globally. We've done it in Japanese, Italian, English, US English, English, Australian English. So it works really well. Small steps to change is a big thing.
That's really neat. I was recently doing some work with Daniel Pink. He came and spoke to a number of us, and he talked about chronotypes and how some people
Yes.
operate better early in the day, other people later in the day. So is it that type of thing that starts to get picked up as you look at the data and you play to people's strengths?
Well, it's interesting. So Daniel Pink will talk about, you know, um, the importance of timing and that the your chronotyping is interesting, but it can be shifted over time.
Right.
So what we largely see, the big surprise for people is even though you sleep, that doesn't mean you're recovering. So everyone knows you need 7 to 9 hours sleep a night, but you need 7 to 9 hours of recovery. And what we do is with the heart rate monitoring, we can show that if you were watching Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, arguing with the missus, drinking booze, having coffee after 3 o'clock, your recovery when you're asleep, you've still got
Yeah.
your stress system activated. So we will coach people to say, how do you quieten your mind before bed? That could be reading a book. That could be, not, having booze-free days because alcohol's a sedative, but it doesn't mimic a natural sleep cycle. And of
Yeah.
course, we know sleep's super important because physical recovery is the first 4 hours, but mental recovery, so how you lay down new memories, how you do all that is the second half. And many people are missing out on this second half. We know, of course, that shift work has been put on as a potential carcinogen just because it's so
Yeah.
disruptive to your sleep. So
Yeah.
sleep's really important, but showing people during the day how stressed they are and giving them a simple tool. If you can slow your respiration rate to 6 breaths per minute, automatically your stress system turns into a recovery system. So pretty simple. You've just got to remember to do it during your time.
That's actually encouraging me to start breathing a little more slowly. I
Exactly.
that Finnish device, what was the name of that company?
So the device is called First Beat,
First Beat.
and they are a wellness essentially they're a wellness device company, and these are called biofeedback devices. And we're measuring heart rate variability. So it's not your heartbeat, it's the distance between beats of your heart. And as that changes, we can measure what's going on. So I can, if I was to send to you work for 3 days, I could tell you VO2 max, tell you
Wow.
walking speed. It would tell you how much recovery you got at night. Obviously, there's daytime recovery. You could sit down at lunch and read a book, and it mimics, in some respects, a natural sleep cycle. It can show the impact of napping, all those kind of things. So if you're a stressed executive or an executive under a lot of pressure, understanding how to recover, because recovery is the secret sauce to success. It's not extra workload, it's the recovery where you make your gains. So teaching people how to do that and giving them their results pretty important.
It's funny on that recovery piece that we really don't talk enough about it, but I even think in simple terms back to like when I played rugby at university, we would take creatine drinks to try and improve our recovery so we could go and do more reps. The creatine didn't give us bigger muscles. It helped us recover more quickly. Bit of a hack.
Yes.
Probably had some downstream impacts on the kidneys, but it worked.
Yeah, it's interesting. So these devices come from the Finnish Winter Olympic team. So if you were happen to be in that team, if you didn't get enough parasympathetic recovery the night before training, they don't let you train. It's literally you're measured on your recovery. So then you take that into the mainstream. We probably had 1,500 executive wear these devices, and it's interesting. Some people, have life sorted, because stress is something we shouldn't be worried about. But chronic stress is, burnout's a big thing these days. But stress is a natural response to stimuli. And once you wear it, as long as you're recovering well, it's okay.
You're good. So you touched on shift work as a carcinogen. That captures my attention because we do a lot of work with our customers putting people into operating environments. And we've obviously talked about the executives' recovery, but have you seen any examples of being able to put this data into play to drive better health outcomes, better recovery outcomes for shift workers?
So I don't work with shift workers per se. I'm more the executives, office-based executives. But it's not my view that that shift work is a carcinogen. That's the WHO. So that's what they're saying.
Right.
So this isn't a view of Duncan Young. This is a view of the World Health Organization. So shift work and giving people adequate breaks to recover, and then helping people understand that, we've given you an adequate break to recover. That's actually for recovery. It's not for
don't go party in Bali.
Don't go party in Bali. That's right.
Yeah.
So again, if you give people the right information, largely people get it right, and information is king. So it's funny, I've looked at essentially construction workers, if you like, so foremen on site. We see interesting things that if people, if one example is people who are living on the Central Coast from Sydney. Train trip was about an hour and a half each morning, but they need to be on site around 6 o'clock. So they were getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so interrupting a normal sleep cycle. But once they got on the train, they actually had 90 minutes of sleep, and it mimicked the natural response to their sleep cycle. So once they could see that their body was recovering on the train, they stopped scrolling through their Instagram and on their devices. They would actually try and get extra recovery. So it's about using your time better. Could be reading on the train to slow your mind down, or we all need a break between when we finish work. We need an end of work routine, which is Cal Newport's description. Transitioning from work to the rest of life, which is called home.
That's a big one. I worked with an executive coach recently that talked about bookending the day. Start with something for yourself, end with something for yourself. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends which way you look at it, with COVID, with a lot of people moving to remote work, they're walking from their kitchen, their dining room, spare bedroom, straight into the family environment, sometimes multiple times in the day. Like that becomes a challenge whether you're an executive or not. Are
Yeah.
there any sort of key practices, routines, rhythms that you've seen with your executives that you work with that help with that end of work routine?
Look, broadly, we crave routine, and routine helps us set up habits as well. So 40%
Yeah,
of all your daily actions are related to your habits. So an unconscious action that, just goes on the background.
yeah,
So with COVID, obviously it changed a lot of things, but changed a lot of things for the better. I was able to do more. I didn't have to commute into the city every day. It allowed me to more quiet time. So the ability to research books, write the blogs, and record the podcasts. So I think mimicking either a work cycle if you're working from home. So let's say I walked from
yeah,
here down to the Manly Ferry, and then that was my sort of start of the day. Well, you can still mimic that even if you're working from home. You could walk to the ferry and walk home, and so it's just about not doing extra work. It's about mimicking a natural cycle. And of course, we know productivity is based around having good breaks. The desk time study we know is quite a famous study, but and it was more based around numbers and things. But the most productive workers worked a 52-minute work cycle, and then they had a 15-minute break. That's where we saw the most productivity coming.
right.
So if you think about breaking up your day into 90-minute cycles, etc., with morning, have a morning tea, a lunch, and afternoon tea, and then you do an end
Yep.
of work routine. That's really important to maintain because the routines are something that really do underpin your day.
Yeah. And actually, maybe like you said with COVID, it's way healthier to take that walk down to the ferry terminal than to be in a car for 60 minutes in traffic. So you can probably mimic healthier routines than maybe you were stuck in before COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I suppose what we've mentioned just then is really about physical well-being, but well-being is a really broad church. So you've got physical well-being, you've got mental well-being, you've got career well-being, financial well-being.
Yeah.
So if you think about, if we've spoken previously about a strength-based approach to change, if we know, like for me, curiosity is what drives me. So allowing a time in my day to read something, listen to something, or to write something
Yeah.
is really important when I feel I've had a good day and I reflect. They're the kind of things. So you don't necessarily need to. I swim every morning, as we mentioned, the Bold and Beautiful down in Manly. But
Yeah.
if you just took time for yourself to listen to one podcast or read one section of a book or whatever, they're the important things. So carving things out so you can grow and learn. Because
Yeah.
again, our elongated careers, we're going to need to be flexible and to keep on learning.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was working with a health coach a couple of years ago, Dan Miller, and one of his big things is anti-fragility, and he talks about getting in the sauna. So I've just recently purchased a sauna, and it's brilliant because my wife and I, sometimes together, sometimes apart, it's a three-person sauna. We'll just get this time in there, and to your
Yes.
point on curiosity, it might give me a chance to read. It may give me a chance to listen to a podcast, but I'm in this enclosed, quiet space. I feel like I'm looking
Yes.
after myself, and it just gives
Yes.
me a huge energy lift.
Yeah. I suppose you've raised an interesting point there in terms of environmental shaping is probably the key to your health and well-being. But we've spoken then about the physical sauna or sauna.
Yeah,
But so if you're in Finland, it'd be the sauna, obviously. And then, the kind of things you can do physically to set yourself up. That might be the kind of food you've got in the fridge or
yeah,
all those kind of things. But you've also got your digital environment. So when you turn your phone on, is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? You know, largely if you want to get on and have a good day, it shouldn't be that. And then you've got your social environment. So who you surround yourself with makes a big difference to how
yeah.
you progress in life as well. So thinking about those three things, the physical, the social and the digital is really important.
The social one's a very interesting one. Scott Galloway's just recently released his new book, Adrift, and he's brilliant at providing these charts that create this profound statement. And one of those charts said that today, compared to 20 years ago, we've all got far less close friends, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably a, a direct correlation with the digital environment becoming so unhealthy. Because if everyone's spending so much time in their digital environments, they're not making the time to really routinely and regularly catch up with good friends.
So we just live in a different world. So I think it's hard to compare what we had to what we have now, because you could
Yeah.
argue that we have greater access to more people than we have ever before.
Uh-huh.
So if you look at studies like the Harvard Grant study, they've been running for 80 years, they
Yep.
pretty much show that the strength of your social connections determines your subjective well-being, or we call that happiness in life. The World Happiness Report, again, you look at the 6 or 7 questions they ask of the 3,000 people across 151 countries around the world, one of them is, do you feel part of, do you feel someone has your back? So that's a question about, do you have a close friend? And obviously Robin Dunbar talks about, the size of the units, the 5, the 10, the really close friends. You might only really have
Yeah.
1 or 2 close friends, and then it multiplies out. But we have an extraordinary opportunity to build our weak connections. And if you think about Gillian Sandstrom, so she's from Essex University, she studies the value of talking to strangers. So
Huh.
did you know that if you just rock up in the morning, so you can try this tomorrow, when you rock up to get your latte in the morning, you're not going to look at your phone and you're going to say to the barista, Paolo, how are you today? How are things with you? You're going to personalize your transaction. It turns out that personalizing the transaction versus just looking at your phone and ordering gives you up to a 15% lift in your subjective well-being or happiness. Think during the day, you've got between 8 and sort of 12 opportunities to speak to people: dog walk, school drop off, ordering your latte,
Yeah.
checkout person. You could be increasing your happiness and your connections through weak connections, even though you haven't got this really strong depth as a close connection. So I think you can curate your social biome, which are all the little things you do during the day. That might be the best friend. It could be the weak connections, talking with strangers, to actually improve, your overall feeling of belonging in your community.
I really like that approach. That's a really positive way to frame where we're at today.
Yes.
And I love the biome construct too, because it is a lot of little parts. It's not just one central unit or movement.
Yeah, so the gut biome piece is, if you think, so we do, I run a podcast show also called Build Your Ideal Day, and
Yeah.
we had microbiota the other day. They're a Queensland-based organisation, and they look at gut biomes. So when we talk about gut biomes, it's the small foods you put in every
Yeah.
day that, increase your gut flora. Why won't we look at our social biomes as well? It's the small social snacks we take every day to increase our mental and our feeling of belonging in society.
Yeah. Actually, it reminds me, we brought all of our teams together in Florida at the beginning of the month in November. And I was speaking to one of our younger sort of entry-level team members. And I'm sitting there with Colton saying, what's new? And he said, I'm really pushing myself to step out and just introduce myself to new people in the business that I don't get to work with every day. So it's a little bit of that, weak connections play. And he was buzzing off it. So that was perfect evidence of that approach.
Yeah. It's funny, if you listen to people like Adam Grant,
Yeah.
talking to people, you can be on your extrovert, introvert radar thing, and talking to people or strangers is not a natural thing. But surprisingly, we find that people enjoy the interaction. I think there's an experiment in Chicago where they said, you're going to jump on a train in Chicago, we're going to give you a small reward for that. Would you talk to the person next to you and see how you go? Most people go, no way in the world am I talking to anyone on the train,
Yeah.
They get off the stop and they interview them again. They say, how was that experience? And the majority of people said, wow, it really made my day. I met someone today who I never thought I would have spoken to. So even we've all got to push ourselves to make these stronger bonds in our society, because we're seeing lots of people getting their information feeds from different sources, and we're We're
Yeah.
slowly splitting apart. We need to be able to talk to people and hear their views and be active listeners. Obviously, listening is a really key skill that we all need to get better at.
Yeah, it is. It's probably one we should be doing more work on in schools when you think about it.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I
Well,
think that's a huge one.
we're living long lives, so school never ends. So
True.
we've got to keep on learning these skills. Linda Grattan's work on the future of the skills that we need is really important over time. And one of those is interpersonal relationships can become more important as we progress.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, no, I think that's going to be a huge part of the future of work. With the other thing I liked about Adam Grant, I'm glad you mentioned him. He had a post out on Twitter the other day that talked about data showing that people that go and do their side hustle, and you gave evidence of this at the beginning of this conversation, people that go and do their side hustle on a Tuesday night turn up to work on a Wednesday far more enthused and energetic.
Yes.
So, whether that's because they connected with people in a different sphere to their daily job, daily social routine, or whether the work really sparked some excitement, in your case, building a really cool house. I think there's value in pushing ourselves out of the daily routine as well, having a good daily routine, but also just constantly exploring at the fringes.
Yeah, look, I think everyone should have a side hustle. So just it not only ignites people's curiosity about the world, it helps them follow things they're interested in. But I think if everyone could think like a business person within a business,
Yeah.
you're going to get more value out of people. It's interesting that if we think about job crafting, so this is a theory that's been around for about 30 years. If you just think about your job in a different way, so it could be cognitive crafting, it could be time crafting, environmental crafting. Just
Yep.
think differently about your job, and then do something to adjust that. It makes people far more engaged at work. So I think increasingly this idea of job crafting, so changing your role to suit your strengths is what it really is going to be
Yep.
really important. And it sort of ties in with the side hustle concept as well.
It
Like I've
does.
essentially built two, 6-year chunks of my career out of things that I was interested in. I've been able to make them a business and stay within a larger business. So,
Yeah.
that people would often say, you seem to know more about this than anyone I know. Maybe you should be the head of health and wellbeing or whatever.
I think we're actually just one of our values here at Huddle 3 Group is be pioneering. So we've started this Pioneers Club. We're working with Dr. Ernesto Ciroli, who has done some really cool work in economic development. And his whole view is, if you harness the beauty in people, the passion in people, so that they can come and do what they want to do, then that's where you start to see innovation in a community or in an organization, particularly with entrepreneurship becoming more and more, real, I think, for a lot of people. And what's been interesting, we're only just kicking off that initiative, but to your point on job crafting, people are starting to become excited about having the opportunity to explore what they are passionate about, what they do like, what they want to be the expert in, and not being told, well, in this company, if you want to get to this role, you have to do X, Y, Z. It can't be that rigid anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think having a really strong vision. So when I look at companies that do health and wellbeing really well, one of the things they have is alignment to the vision of the business. And so Be Pioneering is a great one. It'd be interesting to unpack that and see what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. So
Yeah.
if you were to be pioneering, what does it actually look like? Or have you seen examples in the past where you've been pioneering and it's worked well for you? I want to also unpick another thing that we've mentioned COVID a few times. So we're in a post-COVID environment. And you
Yep.
mentioned the word anti-fragility. So we have an expert here in Australia called Dr. Paige Williams. She's an expert on anti-fragility. Tal Ben-Shahar also talks, he's from New York University, talks about anti-fragility a bit, about if you, you crush this ball in your hand, if it returns back to the normal size, that's called being robust. But if you
Yeah.
drop this ball from this height and it bounces higher or bounces back, then that's really anti-fragility. And we had some Australian researchers, this in the positive psychology space, look at the impact of the SARS pandemic and
Hmm.
also the COVID-19 pandemic, and they found that the stress of the pandemic in some cases actually allowed post-traumatic growth, that they were actually started new parts of their career or they looked at things in a different way. So I think anti-fragility is really important. It's the next logical step on from being robust, which is just about to take more and more pressure without crumbling. But anti-fragility is that really bouncing back, and I love that idea.
Yeah, and I hadn't heard of post-traumatic growth, but I
Yeah,
think it's true. We've seen good examples of it out there where people grow, and in fact, we've had a few people on the podcast when we talk about what their definition of good teamwork is, particularly people from the military world, and they look back fondly on coming through the trauma of boot camp or Royal Marine training, commando training in Lympston or wherever it might be.
yes,
Very cool. So maybe moving into that team direction, a lot of your work, Duncan's, with executives and professionals. How have you seen that translate into the team environment that they're in? If a leader is really truly setting these good habits, how does that
yes,
trickle down?
yeah. So, firstly, well-being is what's called a continuum. So we say, there's a thing called a Cantrell hope ladder. So, out of scale of 1 to 10 today, how is your life going from a well-being point of view, and in the future, how would you like it to be? After asking that question thousands of times, I'm yet to find someone that says, "No, I want my health and well-being to be worse than it is today." That that suggests on the continuum that you never get there. It's a Well-being is a skill of small daily intentional actions we make every day. So once we understand what good well-being looks like, and again, that could be the physical well-being, mental well-being, career, financial, all that kind of stuff, then we start to think about the role in which we play. So many of the well-being work that we've done in the past is about me. So it's about Duncan being the best version of himself,
Yeah,
using the heart rate monitor and that kind of stuff. But then we need to think about um, the next thing, which is we. So, as a leader, how can I set up the environment to help Duncan thrive? So, it could be healthy food at work. It could be managing meetings so that Duncan can go for a swim each morning, or if he's been traveling or speaking overseas, that there's an additional day off before he goes back to the office. And then there's us, that's a broader, this is almost like at the government level of stuff. So how do we shape our environments that communities thrive? So when you're
yeah,
surrounded by people who are thriving, you're more likely to thrive yourself. So I think viewing it in those three things, so it's the individual, that's the me, the we, and the us is really important. And leaders can make a really big impact. High performing teams, I often said, if you go into a room, you're about to start a presentation, and I literally do hundreds of presentations. You watch the deeply engaged team, they're not on their phones waiting for you to start. They're chatting to each other. They've got dialogue. There's a buzz in the room. You go to others
yeah,
who are disengaged and they're just waiting for the show to start. That they're going to speak for 50 minutes and not much is going to happen after that. So
yeah,
that's because the leaders probably said, we've got a really special guest coming in today. This is going to help you. So they're framing why well-being is important. They're probably given enough time off for them to think, to maybe their job crafting themselves, or, so everything a leader does is really important. So we join organizations because we like the rolled up goal. Everyone joins your organization because it says be pioneering, but they leave organizations because the manager who they're aligned to
yeah,
doesn't share the same value. And it's interesting. I often I do this a dirty trick, but I say, how many of you are looking forward to the weekend? Like really looking forward to, can't wait for the week to end, had enough of the working week. And I say, but just before you put your hand up, I want you to tell you that people who have a manager who they see as a partner don't experience what's called the weekend effect, because they're a partner in a business, versus those that see their managers as the supervisor can't wait for the weekend because they don't have their own autonomy and their own competence. So it's a
Yeah.
really interesting thing. The leader plays an amazing, or your direct uh, inline supervisor plays an enormous role in your overall health and well-being.
Yeah, that's actually a big one. I was listening, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it was a book on Blinkist, like short summaries, and it said there was this coach talking to an employer, and he said, if you call your staff and say you're sick for the day, how do you think they feel? And he was like,
Yeah,
oh, I think they feel okay. I think they feel like they'll get on with the job, and they don't need me there. And the coach is like, actually, the data suggests that when you call your staff and say that you're not going to be there, they rejoice, they're relieved, they feel like they have the autonomy and the freedom to get their work done. That's a default position in a lot of teams. So having a manager that's partnering, as you said, and
yes,
giving people room, giving people autonomy, setting good health and wellness examples, it's
yeah,
clearly a way to drive performance.
yeah. But if we start the beginning of the interview talking about the difference between health and well-being, and an example of health would be is when you're sick, you get sick leave. So in Australia, that's about 10 days. I'm not sure what it is in the
Yeah,
US. But companies that are thinking ahead of the game are giving well-being leave, which is if you feel you need to take a day off to look after your health and well-being, whether that's medical, physical, social, or whatever, we'll give you 3 or 4 days a year to do that. And,
yeah,
some companies are doing that. And they're finding that not everyone takes their well-being leave, because just knowing that they're trusted to manage their own well-being not only reduces sick leave, but people don't even take their well-being days, because just the knowledge that if they need to, they could take it is enough.
yeah.
And so that's pretty special when we're starting to deal with giving people autonomy to live their best work and normal lives.
I think you're right. In fact, I was talking to Eric the other day, who's the CEO of Smart Search, our software business, and he was saying that he's noticed an interesting phenomenon recently, bringing some team members in, and they're not asking questions about PTO the way that most new employees will here in the US. Paid time off, which is a catch-all bucket for sick leave and
Yeah.
vacation holiday. And he was saying it's a really interesting phenomenon, which he puts down to the fact that these people are excited about the autonomy they're being provided and the mission that they're coming to join, the cause
Yes.
that they're here to deliver on. So there is absolutely some hard science behind that.
Yes. One caveat, I think, if we're to extrapolate that even more, is that when we're working from home or we're working remotely, that we haven't got the guardrails that we used to have. Come in at 8, you'd leave at 5:30, everyone would come
Yeah,
together for lunch. Like if you work for a European business, they come at 9, they're left at 5, and everyone sits together for lunch for an hour.
yeah,
And they're actually phenomenally productive. So you go, how can they be that productive with that less time? So I think we need to, as we move to greater passion in our work, we need to make sure as leaders we're looking at our employees and saying, actually, I know you love your work, but make sure that you've got the balance right, because you will get the best out of you as an employee, and you'll be the
yeah,
best example for others if you can maintain this over the long term and not,
yeah.
go into a really deep dive and then, explode.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big one. We had a guest on the show, Suzanne Conrad, who'd worked with Lululemon, and she was, instrumental in driving a lot of their culture and people initiatives. And one of her big things in her new business is about remembering your future self, which requires you to think about not just what you're performing this year at work or this year at home. It's,
Yeah.
how do you want to look back and remember yourself in 10
Yeah.
years, what you've achieved? So you start to think about health and well-being. You start to think about relationships. You start to think about growth and how you've kind of explored your curiosities. And I think it's good to take a more holistic approach to that personal planning. Maybe that ties nicely into that job crafting opportunity that people have if they really think about where they want to get to in life, how they want to be existing as a 60-year-old, a 70-year-old, an 80-year-old. Maybe that starts to pull them forwards into some new avenues to explore.
Yeah, James Clear sums this. So he's the author of Atomic Habits. He has a great example of that. He talks about identity-based change as a habit change theory. So
Yeah.
he says every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you want to be. So you're, with your rolled up goal, to be the best version of yourself, to be the healthiest,
Yeah.
expand your health span. Every action you're taking is a vote for the kind of person you want to be in the future. I think if people can remember that, and obviously, you don't need to be goody two shoes, every day of the week, but if you do more good than bad, then you're going to get there in the end.
I really like that. It's a great framing statement.
Yeah.
Very cool. There's so much we've covered. If you think about teamwork in the future, and you said it earlier, it's hard to kind of join the dots sometimes, but in retrospect it helps. But if you were to be taking a shot at joining the dots for the future, Duncan, what do you think would be a good outcome for teams, in 10 years and 15 years time with the emerging knowledge base that we're developing and the emerging technologies and social change?
If I was to look into the future, I think the future is human. So, we know that, machines are going to help us with a whole bunch of stuff, with the really smart stuff, like being able to just do the capture things on the internet. It's
Yeah.
always going to be done by humans. So how can we be the best version of ourselves? Well, we're the best version of ourselves when we feel supported, we're given the right autonomy, and those kind of, it's essentially self-determination theory. So competence, autonomy, etc.
Yeah.
So if we think of how that plays out in the future, it's giving people, the freedom to explore the kind of stuff they're good at, build on their strengths over time, setting it up as leaders, so creating the right environment for people to do that. And then because we don't know the future, then we're more likely to thrive and succeed if we're all, emotionally and physically well. So focusing on the whole human's really important. And of course, work is such a key thing to humans in terms of our identity. We find a lot of our purpose in life from work. You meet a lot of your colleagues at work. So work's going to be really important. We just need to remember that it's a really important part of our society, and helping shape that for others is really key.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great outlook. If I summarize some of the big things that I heard today, I love the fact that you created the curiosity, you used data to kind of drive people into the habits and really build on strengths. I think that's a great approach to bringing well-being into the workplace. I thought it was fascinating the way that you talked a little bit about like end of work routine, and the way that we work, either 52 minutes and the 15 minutes to give ourselves recovery time. I think recovery is something that we just don't talk about enough in teams or in the professional world, maybe quite separate from what's on the sports field. So that's a great catch. And the social biome, that one just stood out to me in a big way. I love the concept of going out and talking to strangers and getting that lift. I think that's something that we can all do, building on those weak connections. So that's a great hack and a great habit. So lots of good stuff there. And I think the final one that we ended on, as far as how you take well-being into teams and into communities, that movement from me to we to us, that's huge. I think it's a great way to be building teams. It's a great way to be exploring different teams in your communities. And, there's a lot there to unpack from today's conversation for our listeners. So a big thank you. And if anyone was to want to reach out and learn a bit more about having you out as a speaker or as a coach or a strategist, how do they best find you, Duncan?
Okay, so the best way to find me is duncanyoung.com. So it's my website. I've got a podcast series, which you can find on Apple, called Build Your Ideal Day, all one word.
Yeah.
And so you can just reach out and get in contact. But the key things that I want everyone to remember today is that if you want a successful wellbeing programming your business. You've got to build awareness, got to foster curiosity, and you've got to embed lasting change. Do that in what's called a learning loop. So if you just keep on adjusting it and doing it again, you're going to be successful. And of course, thank you to you, Dane. So you probably, at a high level, you probably think, oh, well, I want to record 50 podcasts this year. But really what you're doing is helping other people gain access to speakers and information they might not come across. So good on you for taking the time to not only think of all the speakers, but obviously put on your own podcast. So well done.
No, thanks, Duncan. It's been a pleasure. We'll talk again soon.
Great.